There are a lot of games that I spent an unhealthy amount of time on as a kid. The My Little Pony roleplay server on Roblox, the Warrior Cat server on Roblox, the Wolf MMO on Roblox. Actually, now that I think about it, a lot of them involved Roblox. There was Fantage and Free Realms and Wizard 101 and Club Penguin and Neopets and Pixie Hollow and Pop Tropica, and that's just scraping the surface. But I feel like everyone had that one game as a kid, that game that you'd spend all day at school thinking about and then you'd rush home, and as soon as you got home you'd just spend your whole evening playing it. And for me, that game was Animal Jam. Developed by WildWorks and National Geographic in 2010, Animal Jam was an educational virtual world for kids to play games, chat with friends, and customize their own animal characters. As most virtual worlds tend to do, it devolved into a cesspool of scamming, glitching, hacking, drama, and controversy, and I'm here to talk about all of it. I've been wanting to make an Animal Jam video for quite a while, considering I spent most of my childhood on it, but I was really shocked at just how many of you requested it. I get messages almost daily asking me to cover Animal Jam, so I'm really excited to cover something that's not only nostalgic for me, but hopefully for you as well. So without further ado, let's get into the Animal Jam deep dive. Before we get into things, I'd just like to give a huge thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. So Scentbird is a monthly subscription service that delivers amazing fragrances right to your door. For only $16 a month, Scentbird will deliver a new designer fragrance of your choice, from Gucci to Prada to Dolce & Gabbana. Oh, that rhymed. But if those aren't your thing, there are over 600 brands to shop from. Whether you want to shop designer or indie, Scentbird has you covered, and you can even take this super fun quiz to get some recommendations based on your personality and preferences. I got Love High by Confessions of a Rebel, Eros by Versace, and Daisy by Marc Jacobs, so quite a wide range, and obviously all of these scents were absolutely incredible. I know what you're thinking, $16 for some little trial size perfume. Well, that's where you're wrong, because Scentbird fragrances come in 30-day supplies, and with these sleek 8ml rollable sizes, you'll have more than enough to last you until the next month. Scentbird is great for trying out a new high-end fragrance before committing to a full bottle, or if you just want a rotating selection of new and fun fragrances each month. And with a flexible subscription service, you're able to add extra scents to your delivery or skip months if you want to take a break. It's all up to you. Scentbird is now available in the USA and Canada, so use code IZZY, that's IZZZY, to get 30% off your first month at Scentbird. You can also download the super convenient and super easy to use Scentbird app, links in the description. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the deep dive of Animal Jam. In this video, we're going to go over everything from the scammers to the hackers to all the drama and controversy, but first let's start off with a little bit of history. Also, just to preface, I'm going to be talking about Animal Jam in the past tense for most of this because I just associate it with the past because I played it as a kid. The game is still active and running, but I just wanted to explain why I'm going to be referring to it in the past tense. Created in 2010, Animal Jam is a massively multiplayer online world for kids where they can play games, chat with friends, and customize their very own animal character and den. The game was a collaboration between the developer WildWorks and the National Geographic Society, and this was evident from the game's quote-unquote educational nature. The game aimed to teach kids about the environment and natural world by integrating educational content throughout, though let's be honest, none of us really paid attention to it as kids. By 2011, just a year after its launch, AJ had already reached 1 million registered users, and by 2013 that number had skyrocketed to 10 million. In-game, the staff team called themselves AJHQ and managed public relations, updates, and individual user queries. While the game had pretty humble beginnings, it continued to grow and update as the years went on, introducing premium currency systems, new areas and games, and tons of new animals. Weirdly enough, the early timeline of Animal Jam is pretty hard to piece together, as before 2011 there was no update blog or archive, and the update blog that did exist from 2011 to 2016 is no longer publicly available. However, I did manage to piece a lot of it together from fan-made blog spots and Weeblies, and also the Wayback Machine. While the game launched in late 2010, most of that year was taken up with game production and beta testing. We can see from this beta login screen that the iconic blocky art style had been solidified, but in comparison to newer login screens, it's a lot more dark and gritty and kind of mysterious looking. Also, the logo is different. During the beta testing period, there was no membership, and the only 4 locations were Jamar Township, the Lost Temple of Zeos, Crystal Sands, and Seripia, later changed to Seripia Forest. Though locations were limited, it was clear from the map that other areas would soon be released. In the beta, Crystal Sands was a beach with sandy cliff tops instead of a water park, and other locations had small cosmetic differences which would differ in the game's final release. There was also a unique den created specifically for the beta known as the Beta Den, which was not available upon launch and has never returned to the game. Beta testing ended on the game's launch date, the 10th of September, but testers were gifted a month of free membership as a thank you. It's also worth noting that the Coral Canyons area was added on the launch day as a sort of celebration slash thank you. Information on the rest of 2010 is fairly scarce, other than they made some social media accounts in October I believe, and they also added achievements in December. Let's move on to 2011. Now 2011 was a really big year for Animal Jam. In January, the Mount Chevere area was introduced alongside seals in the icy lake that everyone was convinced you could break and it would give you free rares and membership. One huge development that came during this year was the introduction of the trading system in March, but we'll get to that in more depth a little bit later. Apendale was added in April alongside the elephant, and I specifically remember it was around this time that I got my first membership because for some reason the elephant being added was the thing that pushed me over the edge and made me beg my mum to get a membership. I don't know what the appeal was, but it was very powerful. Interestingly, this update also added members only emotes. I'm actually still kind of obsessed with the regular emotes, like I think if someone posted a tweet that was just this, I would lose it, but the members ones were animated and looked pretty nice. Another big update came in June, introducing pets. Basically you could adopt and dress up these little pet companions, and yeah, it was kinda weird since you could like be a seal and get a pet seal and stuff like that. Kinda disconcerting, kind of a goofy Pluto situation, but you know, let's just ignore it and pretend it's fine. Pets never really interested me, but they seem to be a popular incentive for kids to buy premium currency and membership, so they stayed. Then came the Oceans of Jamar update in September of 2011. I remember this being a huge deal at the time, as not only did it introduce a bunch of new areas and animals, but opened up a whole underwater world. I mean, to be honest, looking back, the underwater levels are pretty much identical to the land ones, just with swimming animations instead of walking, but it felt really big. The update added 3 new areas, Crystal Reef, Bahari Bay, and Deep Blue, and introduced dolphins and sharks. In October, adding on to the previous update, a new ocean area called Carney Cove was added alongside turtles in the first ever underwater den. In comparison to the previous year, 2012 was far less exciting, but there were still quite a few updates of note. Horses, penguins, and octopi were released, with snow leopards and arctic wolves being the first animals released as gift card exclusives. Interesting little bit of 2012 monkey trivia for ya. Monkeys, which had been one of the 6 original animals from the beta, became endangered in March, with players not being able to buy them anymore. This was supposedly to raise awareness for endangered monkey species in the real world. In August, they were brought back after players had raised over 1 million gems in the conservation center. So hooray! Later on in March, the rare tag was added to various items, which didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but it was huge, and rare trading became another key feature of the game. Most players made it their life goal to collect rares, and entire economies and trading systems were set up around these uncommon items, but we'll get into all that in more depth later. In May of 2013, diamonds were introduced as a premium currency alongside the diamond shop, which sold exclusive animals, den furniture, and apparel. Adventures were also introduced as sort of story-based challenges slash quests that you could play through to win gems and prizes. Later that year in July, Canberra Outback was released alongside kangaroos, which was fitting given its decidedly Australian aesthetic. There's not much else to say about 2013, but one interesting little bit of trivia is that they briefly changed the map style to a more sort of sleek and lineless design, but ended up changing it back to the old version pretty soon after. At this point, I'm just going to discuss 2014 to modern day Animal Jam in one segment because I feel like there aren't enough huge updates on the timeline to give each year its own segment. The most notable update was probably the Belush update in 2018, which added a whole new swamp themed land. In the years prior to the Belush update though, AJHQ seemed to focus all of their attention on developing the new updated version of Animal Jam called Play Wild, which became available in early 2015. It was basically a newer version of the game with completely overhauled 3D graphics, available on iOS, Android, and as a PC download. While WildWorks kept the old 2D version of Animal Jam running, now renamed to Animal Jam Classic, they focused most of their attention onto the new 3D remake, which was changed from Play Wild to just Animal Jam. A lot of veteran players saw this as an insult and were pretty upset that the old nostalgic Animal Jam of their childhood had been put on the back burner in favor of a new, more monetizable Animal Jam. Unfortunately, neither game can be played through the browser anymore either, which is kind of sad because I feel like that was part of its charm, but they can be downloaded and played, and they can even be downloaded off Steam now. Years later, in 2020, WildWorks came out with an entirely new game called Feral. or fair.rel, I guess. This game uses a similar art style and aesthetic to Animal Jam, but is marketed towards a slightly older demographic of quote Gen Z teens and is more of a crafting / quest based game rather than focusing on minigames. It still has all of the traits of a virtual world for kids like chatting and house decoration and character customization, and of course copious premium currency purchases. I actually quite like the whole aesthetic of Feral. I played it a while back and it didn't really keep my attention, but the character designs and customization are honestly really cool. From what I can tell, the game is pretty popular, and it seems that WildWorks has succeeded in creating a quote-unquote transitional game from kids growing up on Animal Jam to something a little bit more mature. With multiple apps, games, and properties, despite the fact that Animal Jam hit its peak around 2014, it seems that WildWorks is still running a pretty damn successful business all these years later. But we're not here to talk about Feral or Tunnel Town, we're here to talk about the OG Animal Jam. Despite looking relatively inactive according to the stats, the game still has over 3 million active players as of 2020 and is honestly still pretty relevant in today's gaming world. So with all that out of the way, let's move on to the game itself and the community that formed around it. Now I really struggle with how to format this section because we are going to be talking about a lot of very key elements of the game and community in their own sections later, so this is just old nostalgic classic Animal Jam things, hence the name of this segment. Let's get into it. First up, the classism. Yeah, we're jumping right in the deep end straight away. Just Animal Jam things. Now most virtual worlds and MMOs rely heavily on monetization, premium currencies, memberships, game passes, etc. Animal Jam was no different, and while a lot of players say AJ used to be less money hungry, the game is so corrupt and greedy nowadays, the game was always built with the purpose of making a lot of money. As years went on, more members only items and gameplay were released, and hundreds of players even held protests when the premium currency diamond shop was introduced. Non-members couldn't buy the newest animals, most clothing items and rares were locked off, they were stuck with the default den and a smaller selection of furniture, and they could only choose from a small selection of pets. Non-members were also very clearly singled out from members, not only because of their more basic appearance, but because of their plain non-gilded nameplates. What WildWorks had created was a very effective system of what was essentially classism that worked on multiple levels to target vulnerable kids and their parents' wallets. Not only was the game more restrictive for non-members, but this weird community culture formed where members were treated as worthy citizens of Jamar and non-members were kind of treated like trash. And if you think I'm being overdramatic or just exaggerating this for the drama of it, I'm really not. A lot of members were absolutely ruthless, often going out of their way to bully or make fun of non-members specifically for being poor. There are some really uncomfortable threads I've seen kids make about how non-members should stop asking Animal Jam to give them more stuff and just be grateful. So being a non-member basically sucked, and I'm assuming that's why there were so many members in the game. Now leading on from this point, I want to discuss the weird capitalist economy that formed within the game, but before we do that we have to discuss the trading system and rares. This could honestly get its own section, and well, you know what, it will get its own section. It's my video, fuck it. Using the trade system to acquire rares basically became the whole point of the game, with players spending all of their time feverishly searching for them. When Animal Jam first launched, there was no official trade system, and the only way to trade items was to send each other jamograms with items attached as gifts. Naturally, because this was solely based on trust and most of the time the other person would never send you their part of the trade, a lot of people got scammed, and so a proper system was implemented. The new trade system was pretty simple. You put the items you want to trade in your trade box, other people do the same, and you can click on each other and initiate a trade. There's an entire wiki based on valuing each item and advising players on just how much they're worth and what's a fair trade, because if you've ever played, you know just how common scamming is. And don't worry, we will get into that later. One of the most popular rare items were long black spikes, which players just called black longs or plainly spikes. These were released back in 2011 as a monthly member gift and basically became the basis of Animal Jam rarity. There were no official rarity charts or even different degrees of rarity in the game, they were all just listed as rare, so players made their own system using black spikes to measure rarity. On the Animal Jam item worth wiki, for example, most items are listed by how many long black spikes they're worth. And just to give you an idea of how popular spiked collars were as an item, there are currently over 73,000 comments on the item worth wiki page for them, and there are multiple literal essays on how these items play into the larger Animal Jam trading economy. On that note as well, the trading economy quickly became insane with tons of like lingo that you needed to know, and every item had a different rarity and you could only figure it out by word of mouth or by being scammed. As the years went on and after I stopped playing, I can only imagine it became more complex with AJHQ introducing tons of diamond items, rare item Mondays, item re-releases, and more. It's basically a whole mess at this point, and unless you were an OG player, you probably wouldn't be able to break into the trading market at all these days. Actually, when you think about it, a lot of virtual worlds for kids and teens quickly become these capitalist nightmares with completely broken economies. Just look at Neopets or Gaia Online, for example. Parents worry about these games like rotting their kids' brains or whatever, but really they need to be worried about their kids transforming into ruthless business moguls. Spiked wristbands, eyeball hats, tail covers / armor, fox hats, blankets, headdresses, and tiki masks were also pretty rare. Yes, Animal Jam has an extensive history of appropriation, and many theorize this is the reason why headdresses were confirmed to never be coming back to the game. I also remember back when I used to play, gloves were like the #1 thing everyone was desperate for, like they were crazy rare and everyone in Jamar Township would be screaming about looking for gloves. I don't know why, to me they always just looked like weird clumpy arm casts, but the items that players chose to obsess over were always pretty random and more based on rarity and value rather than looks. However, some of the rarest items in the game were actually magenta items. Despite looking like regular items with a weird full magenta color, these so-called mag items were actually the result of a glitch. The default color for all of the items in the game is magenta before they get colored, and these incredibly rare items are allegedly the result of some AJHQ staff forgetting to correctly add the color codes. Due to their unofficial and accidental nature, these items are often 2 or even 1 of a kind, making them incredibly rare. The chances of getting your hands on the only magenta necklace in existence is basically 0, and when you consider there are mag versions of super rare items like the long spike collar or the furry hat, you can start to understand just how highly valued these mags become. The combination of their scarcity, the fact that they're glitched and technically shouldn't be in the game, and the fact that they just look kinda cool makes these items, in my opinion at least, the most rare items in the game. Okay, trading and rares spill over, let's get back to the original section. So now that you're all caught up in the world of trading and rares, let's get back to our original point of classism and capitalism. In the world of Animal Jam, material goods basically determine your worth. The whole point of the game is basically to rise in the ranks by becoming quote-unquote rare by acquiring lots of rare and members-only items. You're judged by how you look and if you have a lot of material goods, and all of these things, the items, the rares, the membership, they all tie back into real-world monetization. I'm not saying Animal Jam is some super evil capitalist hellscape or anything, I'm just saying they use a kind of insidious monetization method where it's not just about paying for better gameplay, but about paying in order to be respected by your peers. It's honestly a really interesting topic that has been discussed multiple times in regards to other virtual worlds and MMOs, like this isn't an exclusive thing to Animal Jam, but I thought it was interesting and worth bringing up. On a lighter note, while we're talking about just Animal Jam things, let's talk about role-playing. While Animal Jam was intended to be an educational learning experience, it had wolves, it had edgy accessories, and it had forest biomes, so naturally it was going to attract weird deviant kids who roleplayed as wolves on the school playground. You know the ones I'm talking about, and that's coming from a place of knowledge because I was one of those ones. There were a bunch of different kinds of roleplays common to AJ, so let's go over a few. First up, adoption roleplays. There was a small room towards the bottom of Jamar Township that was filled with pillows called the Pillow Room, and this quickly became the unofficial official adoption center of the game. Players would usually make themselves the cute small animals like bunnies or seals and write like, "Looking for mommy, please adopt, am orphan." They'd also usually invent some tortured backstory about how they'd been left out in the cold by their heartless parents in order to gain more sympathy. It's kind of hilarious as well because these players would usually write like, "Looking to be adopted, Arctic wolves only," or "Snow leopards only," which was basically code for "only adopt me if you're a member," and "rare because I'm hoping to pull on your heartstrings and form a bond strong enough for you to give me something rare." Players also made adoption centers and orphanages in their own dens and filled them with beds and desks. Like, this was a whole production and really popular and common within the game. Was it kind of weird in hindsight? Yes it was. To be fair, these kinds of adoption roleplays are pretty common on other sites too. I talked about it in my Feral Heart video, and I remember similar things going down on like Club Penguin, but in retrospect it's still pretty weird. Next up, edgy wolf roleplays. Like I said, AJ really drew in that 3-wolf moon shirt, DeviantArt Sparkle Dog OC howling on the playground demographic of kids, so angsty wolf pack roleplays were common. These usually went down either in Serapia Forest, which was basically the designated RP zone in the game, or privately in in someone's den which they had decorated to like look like a forest. Now wolves were by far the most popular animal both in terms of RPs and the game in general, though these were eventually replaced with Arctic wolves and snow leopards, both of which were premium members only animals and therefore better. None of these marshmallow looking tigers. I remember there being a ton of snobbery with the different types of animals, like only Arctic wolves were able to be the alphas. These roleplays would also be super overpowered and filled with arguments, like every fight would be like she bites him, ripping off his leg and completely blinding him, no miss, no dodge, back and forth with neither player ever taking any damage or admitting defeat. Good times. Leading on from these wolf RPs, there were also, of course, Warrior Catz roleplays. If you recognize the phrase WCRP Seripia, you get a veterans discount. These were honestly pretty similar to wolf roleplays, similarly taking place in Seripia Forest, mainly played by wolf characters and very overpowered and generally filled with arguments. Not much else to say here except if you went to Seripia, there was pretty much always someone begging you to join their warriors clan, and there was even a dedicated Animal Jam Warrior Catz roleplay wiki where all of the clans and lore was listed. Now let's move on to probably what is the funniest and most nostalgic section for me, weirdly, scammers and hackers. It just wouldn't be an Animal Jam video without talking about scamming and hacking. It was ridiculously common in the game, and I think pretty much every player has a story of either being scammed or scamming someone else. As a kid, I honest to God had about probably 50 side accounts that I would use to transfer like gems and stuff to myself, but I registered them all under the same email address, so they caught on pretty quick. I wasn't exactly the criminal mastermind that I thought I was. I also remember being scammed a few times, and one time I logged in and just like all of my items were gone, so I have no idea what that was about. Like I said, most people you talk to will have stories like this, and while it felt devastating and soul crushing at the time, now I feel like we can look back and laugh at it. First, there's trust trading. The scammer will ask you to send one of your good items for one of their bad ones and will reassure you that they're gonna return all of your items after and send you even more rares, you know, totally trustworthy. Sometimes the scammer will go back and forth, like genuinely returning your items to you each time before totally dipping, though sometimes they don't even bother with the formality of doing that. It sounds like only an idiot would fall for this, and well, this is a kid's game and well, kids are idiots. I'm kidding, of course, but kids aren't really known for their super deep critical thinking skills at that age and weren't really able to identify scams when they had never encountered them before. Looking back on it, I feel like Animal Jam was the thing that pushed me over the edge and made me into like a cynical, mistrustful person because I got scammed one too many times on there. Animal Jam is where I learned that the world is a cruel, unforgiving place. Another similar method was the I decline all trades scam. The idea was to trade one of your rares for one of their bad items under the presumption that they will in fact decline all trades, when in reality they'll just steal your item and disappear off into the shadows. Again, hard to believe it worked, but it was relatively common. During the early years, it was also possible to get rares by calling up AJHQ and telling them that you'd been scammed out of a bunch of rare items, and I guess they didn't have the resources to check whether that was true, so they'd take you at your word and send you like 3 spiked collars that you'd lost. Now, how well this worked really depended on how willing you were to lie to your parents that you'd been scammed on a virtual game and how willing they were to call up the game itself. AJHQ did catch on to this as a scamming method though, and eventually they stopped replacing supposedly stolen items since more than often the kids were just trying to get free stuff. You really gotta respect the hustle and how far we would go for rares back then. So desperate. Another common scam method, and a pretty ruthless one at that, was to build up trust with a friend before asking, hey, can I try on your super rare beta fox hat for a second? If that friend was gullible enough, they'd send it over, whereupon you would immediately leave and block them forever. Rare competitions were common too, where a scammer would invite players to their den for a quote-unquote competition where the player who sent them the rarest item would win and get a prize. Obviously, there was no real competition, no one was ever getting a prize, and the scammer would collect all of the entries and completely dip, never to be seen again. Now, these scamming methods may seem pathetically obvious, and yeah, they absolutely were. But like I said earlier, this game was filled with kids who were overly trusting and undereducated about what scams even were. After the first few times, you definitely become less trusting and more suspicious, and therefore pretty immune to most scams, and at this point you might have even become the scammer yourself. I made a thread asking people for their Animal Jam experiences and stuff a little while back, and you'd be surprised just how many people openly admitted to scamming their friends. Like I said, it was commonplace back then, and while we can laugh about it now, I do kind of feel like the game made a lot of kids go through their Joker arcs. The insatiable need for spiked collars corrupted us all. Hacking and glitches were also pretty common in the world of Animal Jam, and there are a few fun examples of this. One of the most well-known glitches was a small area in the character color selection box that would allow you to use a secret color. Clicking in a very specific place in the very corner of the lavender box would make your character turn magenta, and another secret color called icy blue could be accessed using the box next to it. I think as kids we all thought we were like super secret hacker guys for finding this out and would wear these glitch colors around to like show off, but in reality pretty much everyone knew about this. I genuinely have no idea if this was some sort of coding mistake or if this was an intentional Easter egg, but it's been there for years and they've never removed it. Another pretty big drama at the time was the user 1231, who had a completely glitched character and would show up completely invisible or as like a glitched monkey model. 1231 became a really popular user for a while, with popular AJ YouTubers speculating over who they were and why they were so glitched, until it was all revealed in a rather surprising way. It turns out that 1231's animal was glitched because the animal in that slot was an unreleased new animal that hadn't even been added to the game yet. Eventually the user's invisible player card became an off-centered llama model with no eyes, which is how everyone found out that llamas were the next animal that were going to be released. So yeah, 1231 kinda spoiled it for everyone. It's assumed that they used a third-party hacking tool to access the llama, and because of all the buzz and attention around them and the fact that they leaked this animal early, Animal Jam quickly banned them. Twitter user LuKrembo was kind enough to share a bunch of screenshots that they took around 2018 when the Animal Jam testing rooms were leaked and players were able to go inside. The screenshots all show pretty standard testing room randomness with games and items scattered around the barren level, but there's also a weird area called the Employee Corral with a bunch of names in it. If any like game developers know what that means or what it's used for, I would love to know. LuKrembo was also able to access the alpha headquarters before they were released. Animal Jam had tons of little glitches and leaks like this, and for the most part they were all pretty harmless. But the site's numerous flaws became more than just a few goofy leaks in November of 2020 when it was revealed that a hacker had stolen 46 million accounts in a huge data breach. WildWorks didn't even realize this had happened until a month later when they were forced to issue a statement to the public. From a TechCrunch article on the topic, quote, "The company said someone broke into one of its systems that the company uses for employees to communicate with each other and accessed a secret key that allowed the hacker to break into the company's user database. The bad news is that the stolen data is known to be circulating on at least one cybercrime forum," WildWorks said, meaning that malicious hackers may use or be using the stolen information. Much of the stolen data wasn't highly sensitive, but the company warned that 32 million of those stolen records had the player's username, 23.9 million records had the player's gender, 14.8 million records contained the player's birth year, and 5.7 million records had the player's full date of birth. But the company did say the hacker also took 7 million parent email addresses used to manage their kids' accounts. It also said that 12,653 parent accounts had a parent's full name and billing address, and 16,131 parent accounts had a parent's name but no billing address. Besides the billing address, the company said that no other billing data such as financial information was stolen. So not as bad as it could have been, but still pretty severe. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a developer or coder, nor do I have any knowledge of security for games like Animal Jam, but it feels like it had quite a lot of flaws both in the actual game with glitches and leaks, and in terms of how easy it was to hack player accounts and for data breaches to occur. Speaking of dastardly deeds and rule breaking, let's move on to the wider topic of inappropriate behaviour on Animal Jam and the safety concerns that have plagued the website for years. While Animal Jam was advertised as a virtual world for kids and had copious censoring, players obviously found ways around this. Despite being a kids game, there was plenty of inappropriate activity in AJ, a prime example being the Pillow Room. If you played, that phrase just sent shivers down your spine. The Pillow Room was a building in Jamar Township containing a small room with a few pillows on the ground. As we discussed earlier, this room was often used as an adoption center or for adoption roleplays, but it was also often used as a place for two penguins who love each other very much to go, if you catch my drift. Yeah, the quote-unquote roleplays that took here got so graphic that AJHQ had to ban the use of the jumping emote over someone who was using the sleeping emote because you know. There was also the wider issue of so-called mate begging, which is when Jamar Township would be flooded with like 20 sparkle dogs yelling, "Need a girlfriend, looking for a mate." Most of the time these relationships would be pretty short-lived and usually at least one person was catfishing, but still mate begging was uncomfortably common. And this rule breaking didn't just stop at the pillow room or vaguely creepy roleplays. It was a pretty common trend to use pillows to spell out scandalous words, and there was even a debacle with the paint splatter item where you could color it. Yeah, you know what, I'm gonna stop there. For some unknown reason, they removed the red paint splat item a few days after it went up in order to discourage violent roleplays, but it didn't see any way that this could be misused in some kind of inappropriate manner. Another example of Animal Jam's weird and kind of nonsensical censoring is beds, or the lack of beds. The race car bed and princess beds were the only two bed items in the game, but were quickly removed because apparently adding beds enabled NSFW roleplay. Reminder, this is still in the game. Scullies were also removed due to the fact that they supposedly look like testicles on certain animals. There was also a scandal where Animal Jam was live streaming and accidentally showed their files for a few seconds, 3 of which were named shitballs, which got them into a fair amount of controversy. It's kind of hilarious because I can see why kids would find this offensive and scandalous, but like, as an adult, I'm sure we all have completely cluttered PCs and have like 10 billion files named things like this. Honestly, I could go on about Animal Jam's kind of weird censorship, from completely innocent words being censored to a multitude of random items being taken out of the game for being too violent or too inappropriate. The point is, despite Animal Jam's super intense and kind of random censoring, players still found a way to be nasty because of course they did. It was this kind of behavior that drew the attention of news channel WFLA in 2015. In their now infamous news segment, Animal Jam Game Concerns Mom, a mother explains why she will no longer allow her daughter to play Animal Jam.
It's safe to say this 10-year-old is addicted to Animal Jam. In the game, you create animal avatars in a virtual jungle and talk to other players.
I like the adventures and I like trading and getting gifts on there.
I mean, this is really sexually exploiting children.
But this young girl's mother believes some players in the game go too far with their graphic sexually charged conversations, using code words to avoid detection.
There are filters on there, but still, unless you're actually saying sex, it's not going to catch it.
Dawn is not letting her daughter play Animal Jam anymore, and she'd like to see the game pulled.
I'm angry. Yeah. I am angry because there's lots of children out there.
Though arguably one of the funniest news articles I've seen.
This avatar says he pulls his pencil out. Another one says she takes off her bar instead of bra. This one says they start snogging again.
It did raise some valid concerns. While a lot of people dismiss articles like this as just boomers panicking over a dumb kids game, all virtual worlds have their dangers and risks, and I've heard plenty of stories of children falling victims to creeps on Animal Jam. I don't think that parents should ban their kids from playing these games. Like, me and thousands of other kids have completely fine experiences on them, but you just need to be careful. I'm not going to be covering any specific situations out of respect for the victims, but the moral is, a lot of this stuff is goofy and funny in retrospect, but these spaces can still be pretty unsafe for kids, and it's really important to look out for them and also look out for yourself when you're online, and please be safe. Given the young demographic of a lot of these virtual world sites, rumours and urban legends are very quick to spread. The Webkinz Killer and tipping the iceberg on Club Penguin are just a few examples that come to mind, and Animal Jam was no different. I'd like to note here that when researching this section, I stumbled back across all of these wonderful old fan-made Animal Jam blogspot websites with articles on how to get free items or guides to various urban legends. It honestly makes me miss when the internet was less like centralized to just Twitter and Facebook or whatever, and instead everyone had their own lovingly handcrafted Weebly site. We should bring that back. Anyway, some of the most common urban legends in Animal Jam were those that promised players free memberships or rare items if they could break the ice on Mount Chevere or the bridge at Coral Canyon. In both cases, jumping made them crack and appear like they were breaking, leading players to believe that this was a sign to keep going. Some believe that you needed an entire room to be jumping at the same time, so you got these massive jumping parties where everyone would be yelling like, "Break the ice, keep jumping," and it was all very epic and cinematic static in our heads. Animal Jam HQ actually never spoke up about the validity of these rumors, and in fact kind of fueled the fire with this cryptic message which seemed to imply that they were true, which they weren't, so that was pretty weird. I guess they were doing a little trolling. Of course some kids would lie and be like, yeah, my second cousin's brother's friend's buddy Eric actually broke the ice and got a magenta glove and a lifetime membership, which everyone else would take at face value because we were kids, so back to the ice we would go. A similar rumor started in 2013 with the grand opening of the premium diamond shop, where a legend spread that if you turned your entire character white and danced on the diamond shaped tiles, you'd get free diamonds. This was a super popular rumor for a while, running so rampant that AJHQ actually did speak out and confirm that it wasn't true, so players would stop flooding the room to the point of lagging. Those urban legends are pretty typical of virtual worlds. I feel like most games have some rumor where like you gotta wear a certain outfit and jump in the corner and you'll get 10 free rares and a lifetime free membership. And while Animal Jam did have a ton of these rumors, it also had a lot that were on the darker and more sinister side. Take for example the infamous legend of F-Man 122, by far the most widespread and mysterious urban legend on Animal Jam. If you were a jammer back in the day, your worst fear was coming across this guy. The story went that a shadowy black and red wolf character called Awesome Sunny Brave with the username Fman122 would send you a jammogram mail with the message, "Thanks for playing with me." This jammogram would often contain a necklace as a gift, which once opened would infect the player's PC with a virus, take over their account, delete all their animals and items, and trade all of their rares to F-Man's main account. Basically, he was a big, bad, scary hacker man, and no one knew who or what he was or if he was even real. Weirdly, a sort of fan base formed around F-Man122, and players started shipping themselves with him and like thirsting over him. F-Man122 is a Tumblr sexy man confirmed. Aside from that though, there's a surprising amount of fan art and fan creepypastas dedicated to the character, and it's clear that he was incredibly popular back in the day. As for whether or not he's real, well, there are conflicting accounts. There are plenty of screenshots of the hacker out there, and on multiple occasions people have been able to get into his den, but it's entirely possible that those are imposters or even just edited photos. There are also plenty of accounts of people seeing or being friends with or even being F-Man, but I feel like kids are pretty prone to lying about goofy stuff like this for like attention or just for fun, so without definite proof it's really hard to know. There's no doubt that hacking and glitches were rampant back then, but these mainly came in the form of other players scamming you or falling victim to free membership and free rare phishing sites. I don't even think it's possible to do what F-Man was supposedly doing, like glitching a jammogram so it infects someone's entire PC. Either way, the identity of Animal Jam's boogeyman remains a mystery to this day. Out of interest, if anyone genuinely did have any F-Man experiences, let me know in the comments because I genuinely do want to know. You know, maybe he's still out there. Weirdly, another almost identical hacker popped up a few years later in 2015 called Richard Jungle. Their character looked like a carbon copy of F-Man122's, except it was a tiger, and they became infamous for hacking famous Animal Jam players. According to a video that Animal Jam YouTuber Apari made, the hacker was only active for a few days but managed to hack multiple accounts and even caused the servers to go offline for a short time. Richard Jungle's targets included Beppa, Wootmoo, Julian2, and Wisteria Moon, with the hacker even banning Julian2's account. Naturally, the fact that they targeted super popular Animal Jam influencers made them and the entire situation go viral within the fandom, and Richard Jungle joined F-Man122 in the hall of mysterious, terrifying hackers that haunted kids' dreams. There were a few theories behind the mysterious figure, including that he was the second coming of F-Man, some sort of deep web creepypasta glitch, completely made up, or the most prominent theory, the account was run by the infamous hacking group Mighty Squad. While Mighty Squad did come out and claim that they were behind the account, they never actually provided any proof, so the true identity of Richard Jungle still remains a mystery. As you can tell by this point, rumors of mysterious and powerful hackers were very popular within the community, and this trend spawned another urban legend, the Lost Jammer. Allegedly, the Lost Jammer used a wolf character with fur darker than you could choose in the username Decompose1. You could supposedly summon him by placing 3 tiki torches around a pillow, and there were even multiple clickbaity videos like summoning the Lost Jammer at 3 AM, you won't believe what happened. The damage that J-Station did to an entire generation of kids is unforgivable. Anyway, this story was obviously just a cheap creepypasta made to scare kids by riding on the coattails of F-Man122, but that leads us into the wider discussion of Animal Jam creepypasta. The game actually has its own creepypasta wiki for spooky urban legends and stories, and it's totally brilliant. On one hand, it's really cool to see so many young writers getting into the internet horror genre and putting their stuff out there, but on the other hand, some of it is pretty funny. We have incredible titles such as Benzie 9876, A True Story, Blood on the Club Geo's Dance Floor, and 5 installments of the award-winning Cartwheel the Lonely koala series. Okay, I fully take my sarcasm back after seeing this image. I'm shaking in my boots. I tried to get into my friend's den, but I was loaded into a dark room. I was alone in there, and it was very terrifying. Sorry for reading that one. You guys probably won't even sleep tonight now. Here's another little excerpt from a story called Don't Break the Ice. My animal screamed as Greeley got up to his paws as blood dripped from his torn stomach. His eyes were pitch black with a tiny red iris. The eyes were dripping black blood as I screamed as well. The other jammers watched in horror. Greeley tore my animal's head off as blood-red pixels came rushing from the neck. Greeley looked at me through the screen, and I felt breathing on my neck. My heart pounded fast, sending a message to my brain saying, "Don't turn around." Then the next thing I knew was that my headphones were pulled off and thrown at the floor as someone whispered in my ear, "Don't break the ice." Not even once, period. Wow, I can't believe I made a creepypasta and it turned out to be good. Don't delude yourself, kid. The story is a steaming pile of crap. Things are heating up in the Animal Jam creepypasta wiki I see. It's all very Sonic.exe. Most of the creepypastas revolve around mysterious hackers or the in-game characters becoming sentient and enacting violence on the author, or some variation on the hyper-realistic Blood Eyes trope. But that's what creepypasta is all about, and to be honest, I earnestly love all of the stories on here. And these stories are still getting regular comments by kids saying how scary they are, so I'm really glad that a whole new generation of kids is able to enjoy these spooky stories. Though you tend to outgrow this kind of stuff a little bit, I still remember being 10 and being terrified by these deep web spooky hacker man stories, so I'm glad to see the tradition is alive and well. I honestly highly recommend the creepypasta wiki. All the stories there are great and it's a blast to read. Let's move on to our next section. In this modern day and age, there are influences for everything. Art influences, beauty influences, goop influences, and this was no different for Animal Jam, with several players gaining huge popularity within the community for their social media presences. I remember as a kid, players like Julian2AJ, Apari, Wisteria Moon, and Beppa were all huge deals, and they almost felt like these super rare, super cool celebrities. Probably because I was a kid and it's really easy to idolize internet figures when you're a kid, so I saw them as these sort of mythical, godlike beings. And this was kind of reinforced by Animal Jam themselves when they were all given a special title, Jambassador. According to the Animal Jam YouTube account, to become a Jambassador you need to have over 2,000 followers, be at least 13 years old, follow Animal Jam's rules, and regularly post age appropriate content. So I mean, technically I could become a Jambassador. Animal Jam? Hit me up? Or maybe not. Despite how kind of low the bar for entry seems, back in the day the follower threshold used to actually be 10,000, and they were really selective over their Jambassadors. In fact, in over 10 years there's only been around 20 Jambassadors. This role got them all kinds of bonuses, from being gifted super rare items to getting official art made of their characters to even getting their own limited edition claw machine plushies. But with great power comes great drama, and despite the fact that these Jambassadors had to keep a very sanitized and child-friendly image, there was a lot of drama and scandal that surrounded them. One of the most popular and controversial Jambassadors was Julian2AJ. Julian rose to the top by posting AJ update videos, top 10s, skits, and a series he invented called Mail Time. Since he received a lot of mail and gifts in the game, he decided to turn it into a series by opening them up on video, kind of like a virtual unboxing. This was the first sign of trouble for the budding content creator, as Animal Jam banned him and claimed that these mail times constituted scams and encouraged other users to host fake mail times as a way to scam people. Julian was banned twice more on his main account, firstly for having personal information in his username, which AJHQ later allowed due to his large following, and secondly to perform quote maintenance on his account for unknown reasons. He was also suspended multiple times for giving out his Skype, as AJHQ were very strict on players giving out any personal details. However, the biggest controversy was yet to come, as in 2017 Julian made a video titled "This Should Not Be Allowed in Animal Jam," discussing the topiary items and how they can be positioned to look like they're having fun in a striped club, if you catch my drift. This video was in good faith and intended to point out why these items should be removed or changed by AJHQ, but the content combined with the pretty graphic thumbnail offended them so badly that they banned Julian for 2 weeks and completely removed his Jambassador privileges. He was removed from the HQ group chat, removed from the channel banner, and all art, videos, and mentions of him were completely scrubbed. There's also a wiki page of all of the current and past Jambassadors, and Julian isn't even mentioned on that? Seems like a bit of revisionist history to me, wiki admins. Obviously devastated, Julian made a rather scathing post directed at AJHQ on Animal Jam, calling them out for using him as an asset for free advertising before dropping him. Honestly, I can see both sides. On one hand, it did seem that Animal Jam had a kind of weird and unprofessional relationship with their Jambassadors, putting a lot of responsibility on them to be these official community figures when in reality a lot of them were just kids. I don't exactly know what communication was like between AJHQ and the Jambassadors, but it does seem pretty ruthless to wait 2 weeks before completely banning and kicking Julian out of the Jambassadors with no warning. Seems like something they maybe should have dealt with privately. On the other hand though, the game is targeted towards kids, and I'm sure a lot of under 13s both played and watched Julian's videos, so that thumbnail and the content of the video weren't really appropriate for that audience. Either way, because of a combination of being kicked out of the Jambassadors and steadily declining views, Julian made the decision to quit YouTube. Wisteria Moon was another super popular Jambassador and actually still makes Animal Jam content, but has steered a bit more towards general gaming and streaming. Snowy Claw was a Jambassador and YouTuber who actually became an intern at AJHQ around 2016 and now works full-time at WildWorks. This was a pretty big deal as it was the first time a Jambassador had actually graduated to full-time work within the company, and it caused a fair amount of buzz. Apari was by far the most popular Jambassador, and his channel became the most subscribed to Animal Jam channel of all time in 2016. His sister Beppa was also a popular e-celeb and Jambassador, but received quite a lot of hate throughout her career due to her admitting that she used to be a scammer. Now, a lot of the drama surrounding these two actually came after both of them became inactive, with Apari becoming a SoundCloud rapper and a quote-unquote drug addict because he went on some live stream and made some super cool and edgy comments about drugs.
I like Adderall. I get a bunch of bad thoughts in my head when I smoke weed.
I get a bunch of bad thoughts in my head when I smoke weed. He transitioned from family-friendly Animal Jam content to pretty stock standard SoundCloud rap photos, which were obviously not appropriate for kids and gained him a lot of hate. There is a conversation to be had about shifting into making sort of inappropriate content when you've cultivated a fan base of children, but you know, whatever he chooses to do in his spare time, which mainly seems to be vaping, is his business. Next, we're going to talk about Scorm, and this is unrelated, but when I had my outline for this video written, I labeled this section talk about smork or whatever. He's not called Smork, he's called Scorm. I just had it wrong in my head. Anyway, Scorm was a pretty popular YouTuber and public figure in the Animal Jam community, but was suddenly banned alongside Jambassador Typical Rocky and a few other popular users for selling Animal Jam items for real money on eBay, with Scorm himself allegedly earning over $2,000 from selling. Now obviously off-site selling is a bannable offense, and while originally the accounts were suspended for a few days, AJHQ decided to turn this into a 20-day ban. Then in a shocking twist, this 20-day ban turned into a permanent ban, and Scorm totally lost it, taking to Instagram to accuse Apari of orchestrating the whole thing. AJHQ themselves actually had to step in and make an Instagram post confirming that no, they don't just ban people because YouTubers tell them to, they ban them for legitimate reasons. However, this decision was called out as hypocritical since Apari himself had been accused of buying items on eBay but never received any repercussions from that, raising the issue of favoritism from the Jambassadors. If you haven't caught on by this point, Animal Jam HQ has a history of kind of dubious decision making. A lot of players actually pretty actively dislike AJHQ for their decisions to remove certain beloved gameplay elements, add too much monetization, or for how they treat their Jambassadors, whether that be too harshly or not harshly enough. At this point, most of the original Jambassadors have moved on since they started playing as kids and have now kind of outgrown the game. It's natural that some things that you're really passionate about as a kid kind of fade away as you grow up and evolve as a person, not to mention the fact that a lot of these Jambassadors were heading off to college or starting full-time work. Though the passage of time and growing up was inevitably going to make these Jambassadors lose passion, copper was another huge contributing factor. We talked about this in my Littlest Pet Shop deep dive, but a lot of creators who focused on kids' toys or games got fully demonetized and had their comments shut down because of the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, or COPPA. This law was basically designed to protect children's privacy and safety online, which is good in theory but has resulted in the complete destruction of thousands of channels whose content is deemed for children. This means even if you're a fully grown adult making Animal Jam content or the content is on the more mature side, it's still deemed for kids because it's a kids game, and that means the views and the revenue are halved. Feelings of boredom after playing the same game for years, frustration at AJHQ's decisions, growing out of the more child-focused game, their lives becoming busier through high school and college, and COPPA were all huge contributing factors to why a lot of the Jambassadors quit. Honestly, it was probably a really hard decision for them to say goodbye to something that was so important to them when growing up, and I really respect their decision to, you know, do what's best for their own well-being. It's pretty sad, but it's nice that a lot of them are still very public about their love for and fond memories with the game, even if it doesn't play an active part in their life anymore. Now, this last drama doesn't really relate to the Jambassadors, but it does involve a famous person. That's right, we're talking about the 2018 Quackity raids. Now, Quackity is, he makes Minecraft content. Is he one of these dream SMP boys you guys are always talking about? Never mind, don't answer that, I don't want to know. The point is, the dude is famous, and with over 4 million Twitch subscribers and 5 million YouTube subscribers, he has a lot of influence. And he uses this influence to raid children's games, from Movie Star Planet to Club Penguin to, yes, Animal Jam. In December of 2018, Quackity conducted the biggest raid on Animal Jam to date, sending the mods into a panic, enraging the community, and going completely viral. Now, the Animal Jam mods were already well aware of the raid before it occurred, and immediately went on the offensive, banning the words quack, quackity, and even the letter Q from the chat. They also updated their FAQs page to try and assure players that there was nothing to worry about and that the servers wouldn't be going down. Upon seeing both Animal Jam HQ and Quackity's army preparing for the raid, users began posting PSAs on social media warning players about the impending disaster. When it began, participants completely flooded the servers dressed as yellow penguins and spammed as many uncensored words as they could, flooding the servers with inappropriate language. Quackity then encouraged his Twitter followers to spam the Animal Jam Twitter account with the hashtag #DuckRights, which almost immediately began trending in the United States. Back in the game, the raiders were finding new and inventive ways to bypass the filter, and it was clear that AJHQ were in panic mode. Whenever the streamer would use a new phrase, it would be banned seconds after, showing that the staff team were all actively working to censor and shut down this raid in-game. I think the record set on that stream was like 20 seconds after something was typed, it immediately got banned. Finally, HQ fully banned Quackity's IP, to which he responded by sending his army of child fans to spam hashtag piss on Animal Jam, which began trending worldwide. Eventually the raids did end, and AJHQ ended up unbanning Quackity after he got a third hashtag trending, hashtag #DuckYou Animal Jam, but the damage had already been done, with servers overloaded and many innocent players banned. For months afterwards, young players of Animal Jam sent hate towards Quackity for trying to attack their precious game, and he kind of became public enemy #1 within the community. Now they're all probably Quackity stans posting fan cams on Twitter. How soon we forget. Summing up all of the Jambassador drama, honestly most of it is just petty kid stuff. You'll find hate on pretty much every Jambassador no matter how clean their record is, and I think that's for a few reasons. Jealousy plays a big role. I mean, when you're 9 and all you want in the world is to be cool on Animal Jam, seeing other kids like you getting preferential treatment from the staff themselves is pretty rough. I think a lot of unfounded hate comes from that kind of jealousy, but a lot of it also comes from these kids seeing the Jambassadors as role models. As a kid, I'm sure it's really shocking and disappointing to see your favorite family-friendly YouTuber go from Animal Jam lore videos to talking about weed and pissing on a live stream.
I'ma take a piss while I'm on live stream.
Or seeing someone who you thought had the perfect life and an amazing loving fan base and tons of views suddenly decide to quit because it's not fulfilling anymore. While we understand that these creators are real people going through the motions of growing up and evolving as people, kids just see things in black and white and they see their favorite creator is bad now, or they're abandoning them. Like I said earlier, I'm glad a lot of these creators have moved on to greener pastures while still being able to look back fondly on their days as an Animal Jam influencer. While Jambassadors and Animal Jam influencers took up a large chunk of YouTube content, there was still a lot of other stuff out there for Animal Jam fans. AJMVs, or Animal Jam music videos, were green screen edits of Animal Jam characters jumping or dancing while typing out the lyrics to a song, usually with some kind of Windows Movie Maker editing in the background. The videos were usually set to some kind of very 2010s pop/emo song, and they're also really funny because you can tell the players that made these just decked out their character in all the garish clashing rares they had just to show off. I remember being invited to people's dens on multiple occasions and they'd make you type out lyrics for their AJMV as they recorded on like Screencast-O-Matic and 420p with the sound quality of a Nokia. Some of the most popular videos from this category include Wrecking Ball AJMV and the Animals AJMV. Get it? Because they're animals, but it's like animals from Maroon 5, it's clever. There were also, of course, Animal Jam's sad story videos, usually followed by "will make you cry" in brackets. These are basically stories told through Animal Jam using the player avatars as characters and the chat box as dialogue. In this genre you'll find sad adoption stories, depressed teens, and tragic love stories where someone dies in the end, all classic tales that tug on the heartstrings. The most popular video of this genre, and honestly probably the most popular and well-known Animal Jam video full stop, is Brave, Animal Jam short film by Wisteria Moon. This is the video that launched her career basically, and the comments are flooded with nostalgia posting because of just how popular this was back in the day. This video is iconic for so many reasons, from the cliched tragic love story plot to the fact that both of the love interests are dressed the exact same to the depressing song of choice being 1,000 Years by Christina Perri, just like every other sad story AMV made in the 2010s. By 2016, Animal Jam had identified that their user base was mainly comprised of MS Paint Wolf artists, so they introduced masterpieces, a new gameplay feature which allowed players to create artwork which they could then display and show off to other players. This was actually a stroke of genius and really sparked the community, as floods of masterpiece themed videos filled YouTube, from speed paints to ranking videos, and of course videos covering the most scandalous and or spooky pieces of art in the game. Obviously Animal Jam had rules around these masterpieces. You couldn't make anything graphic or violent or rude, but obviously players made it their life goal to push these rules to the very limit. Top 10 creepy masterpieces. Top 10 masterpieces that shouldn't have been approved. There were also plenty of videos on the best masterpieces, and while this did spawn probably the funniest thumbnail I've ever seen in my life, these videos were actually really nice. They just spent the whole time showing off really cool art and complimenting the artist, and to be fair, given how limited Animal Jam's art studio was, some of this art is breathtaking. Like, look at this. The in-game art studio is basically on par with like MS Paint, just to give you an idea of how much skill goes into something like this. Now, a lot of players were heavily influenced by YouTubers like Julian2AJ, Apari, and Beppa, and posted similar videos doing mail time, scam videos, roleplays, skits, girl died in Animal Jam, and of course theory videos. Animal Jam had its own lore relating to the land of Jamar and these evil creatures called phantoms, and the alphas who were like the heroes who fought them off. Peck is dead. Greeley killed Peck. Humans were in Jamar. Animal Jam conspiracy theory. Is Animal Jam actually Zootopia? These videos were basically the game theory of the Animal Jam cinematic universe, just proposing these really outlandish theories with little to no evidence, but honestly they were all in good fun and pretty entertaining. Also, that character Greeley was one of the alphas and was kind of like F-Man 122 in that he was this edgy wolf character that got a lot of art made of him and was weirdly kind of verging on being a sexy man. This is evident when you cross over to the animation/animatic side of Animal Jam YouTube and see that one of the most popular animatics in the fandom is about Greeley. Alongside the multitude of animated skits, sad stories, and music videos, there are also tons of maps, aka multi-animator projects. These projects are still going strong to this day, so it's honestly really cool to see that the AJ art community is alive and well even after all of these years. Like I've talked about in my LPS and Warrior Cats videos, a lot of people brush these videos and artworks off as cringe because they're made by kids or made about a kids game, but I think that's a reductive view. I honestly love this kind of art because it's so earnest and there's so much passion, and I miss the days where I could churn out an MS Paint animatic in like 4 days. From the edgy 2010s love stories to the animatics and animations to the top 10s to the theories, the YouTube community on Animal Jam is something I'll always hold pretty close to my heart. Animal Jam is not a perfect game, and it absolutely has flaws. As we've discussed, there's no shortage of drama and scandal surrounding the game, and over the years it's been in hot water on more than one occasion. But Animal Jam is also really cool in that it's inspired so many people to start creating and pursuing art and writing. People have made lifelong friends in Animal Jam, a kids' edutainment game from National Geographic, and I find that pretty amazing. The game's been around for a long time, and while most can agree that it's past its golden years and on the decline, the community is still going pretty strong and creating cool things to this day. If that isn't a testament to how beloved AJ is, I don't know what is. Like most of the communities I talk about, from Littlest Pet Shop to Warrior Cats, it's really the community and the fan base that make the game what it is. It wouldn't be Animal Jam without players screaming about Warrior Cats roleplays in Serapia Forest, or writing over the top Animal Jam creepypastas, or posting trade offers in the spiked collar comments section on the wiki. I even look back on the scamming with fondness. I can laugh about how hilarious it is that I fell for a trust trade or that I thought using side accounts made me some sort of mastermind hacker, and it's cool that a lot of other people can look back and laugh as well. As I said, Animal Jam was and is not a perfect game by any measure, and there's a lot of criticism to be made about various aspects of it, but at the end of the day, it's where I spent my childhood, and I'm always going to have a lot of nostalgia for it. The golden days of AJ were truly unmatched, and I'm really glad that I could take you all along for a little trip back in time. If you have any Animal Jam memories, or there are some dramas or stories that I forgot to mention in this video, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm honestly really excited to see discussion from people who haven't played, from old players who have played, from people who still play. I'm just genuinely excited to be back with the community and see what everyone has to say. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that there haven't been as many videos this month as there usually are, but I wanted to take the time to give this video the time that it needed because it's a really big topic and these deep dives are always quite intensive, so sorry about that, but hopefully it was worth it. I really enjoyed talking about Animal Jam. Like I said, it is where I spent my entire childhood, and I was so stoked to see how many people wanted me to talk about it, so you know, as I said, I'm really excited to see what you guys have to say about it. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring me, thank you so much to my patrons for supporting me, and thank you to you guys for watching. I'm genuinely just, every time I upload, I'm just so glad that people want to watch my weird nostalgic ramblings. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! A huge thank you to my Garfield overlords over on Patreon. Sheriff Whiskey, Trebizonde, Xavier Araujo, SHSL Sunsun, Grip Gunderson, Sophie Skidder, Simon, Durzo Blint, Red Meth, The Furby Librarian, Missy Pendragon, Astrian Vortex, Joe Bradshaw, Jordan Nielsen, John Leach, Helm Hamburger Hand, Chicory, Tyson, Kimono My Gyro, Pom, Dana Homegardner, Arcantilus, Jesse Chisholm, Charlie B, Brianna Robinson, Boysenberry Switchblade, Finley, Agarafin, Doug, and Samsung account. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description, and yeah, thank you for watching. I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! Also, I really hope that it isn't lost on people that I wore, that's right, a black spiked long. I'm not gonna trade it, sorry.